All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jackson Burton, and today I want to be talking about using Olympic weightlifting to benefit collegiate volleyball. So, why did I pick this topic? So, I'm a GCU or former GCU men's volleyball team member, and through my 5 years in the program, there was no representation of Olympic lifting in our training, which I found weird. I've done a lot of CrossFit training in the past and seen the benefits of that in comparison to some of the things I do on the court, and was curious as to why we never use that. So I sought out, I asked some other athletes from other programs, and it seemed like this is a pretty normal thing nationwide. And I think the reason is because coaches don't fully understand the sport of volleyball and its relation to the sport. So I want to do this presentation on that. So by the end of the presentation, you should be able to understand and explain the importance of Olympic lifting, analyze the benefits of Olympic lifting shown in research compared to strength training, apply knowledge of Olympic lifting to the sport of volleyball, discuss the injury rate related to the training style and how to prevent these injuries from occurring. A little background on Olympic lifting. There are two main movements, clean and jerk and snatch, and there's other various movements involved in the training styles that can be hang clean, high pulls, overhead squat, etc. But the two main competitive movements are clean and jerk and snatch. So on the left is the clean and jerk. It's coming from the ground with the barbell to the shoulders and then directly overhead as quickly as possible in a controlled manner. And snatch is going directly from the ground to overhead. So it's pulling the bar with a ton of power directly up on both movements, using the full body and trying to get it there as fast as possible. Why Olympic lifting has so many benefits. So there's a significant vertical power increase when doing Olympic lifting because you're moving the bar so quickly from the ground to a higher position. This makes it so that it's shown to increase vertical jump and counter movement jump testing. This means that this vertical power increase makes it so you're able to test higher on a standing vertical jump and a counter movement jump, which is either a depth jump or some weight weighing you down trying to get up into the air, which is extremely important in the sport of volleyball. It also shows increases in shoulder stability because the bar is overhead so much and you have to hold it there using your shoulders. This just helps with the entire muscular strength there and preventing injuries in the shoulders. It's also full body movements. You're using almost every muscle in the body during the entire 3 phases of the lift. And it's a creatine phosphate energy system increase because it happens between 1 to 10 seconds during the entire lift, which is extremely fast, extremely power oriented, and it's just that immediate anaerobic response to what you're doing. To prove this further, I found a study on the relationship between vertical jump power estimates and weightlifting ability. So there's no training involved. This is just taking 64 U.S. Olympic weightlifters and testing them on both their vertical jump and their current squat, snatch, and clean and jerk. As you can see, there's tons of groups, tons of numbers listed, but essentially overarching, it is showing that the higher your squat, snatch, and clean and jerk are, the higher your vertical jump and counter movement jump are going to be. So just a direct correlation through this study that the higher you're able to lift in those movements because of how quickly it goes, you're able to increase your depth jump or counter movement jump and your standing vertical jump. So this is compared to strength training, you're able to see more vertical jump improvement, more sprint speed improvement, and more counter movement jump improvement that we were talking about before. This is because the traditional strength stuff that we do is higher rep, lower speed, and it does help with sports. It helps with strength. It helps with hypertrophy, but it's definitely secondary in terms of power production to Olympic lifting. This is shown here. There is a study that was done on the comparison of Olympic versus traditional powerlifting. and it was able to show in 20 Division III football athletes that trained for 4 days per week for 15 weeks in two separate groups, an Olympic lifting group and a powerlifting group, that by the end of the study, the Olympic lifting group saw more increases in vertical jump height and vertical jump power, which just proves the point that this training style is able to increase that jump way higher than a traditional strength program that we're doing currently in volleyball, and I think a lot of programs are. The short-term effects. This is another study done, the short-term effects of lower body functional power development on weightlifting versus vertical jump training. So instead of doing just strength training, this is actually comparing it to plyometric training that a lot of programs are doing as well, jumping on boxes, weighted jumps, different things like that. 32 men were participating in this study. 12 people were in a weightlifting group, 12 people in a vertical jump group, and then 8 in a control group over an 8-week training period. And by the end of the program, it was able to show that the Olympic weightlifting group actually increased their standing jump and their counter movement jump higher than both the vertical jump group or the plyometric group and the control group. So furthermore, that this Olympic weightlifting increased even more than typical plyometric training does in terms of vertical power and vertical jump. So when we're bringing this back to volleyball, volleyball is a highly explosive vertical sport. In almost every position that you're going to play on the court, you're going to be jumping to maximum heights to try and compete on top of the net. Plays last on average for about 10 seconds in men's volleyball, which is all creatine phosphate energy system. Extremely quick power that we were talking about before, anaerobic, that's directly related to that Olympic lifting that we're doing in that short period of time. And you're doing overhead swinging and setting in majority of the positions as well, which requires a lot of shoulder stability that you'd be able to train doing Olympic lifting. In addition, the court is a super small space. It's 30 feet by 30 feet on your half of the court, which means you're not sprinting very long, maybe a couple steps, but short bursts of power, again, and not very much anaerobic glycolysis or even aerobic training that needs to be involved for the sport. In addition, the main recruiting variable that coaches look at when they're trying to get athletes is vertical jump. So if an athlete maybe isn't as skilled as someone else coming in their position, their vertical jump or the ability to jump high can show potential for that athlete to be great in the future, which shows how important this is for the sport. The main argument that I feel like I see when we're talking to the coaches about doing Olympic lifting is injury within athletes that maybe haven't done this movement before. But the short answer for is it a high injury rate is no. You can scale the movements down extremely slow and low weight. So you can, for example, bring in a PVC pipe for training instead of a barbell, or advance them into just very lightweight training, because you can move the bar or the PVC pipe quickly, increase your neuromuscular control, and still be doing all that power development, even with the weight being low, and then eventually advance it forward. In addition, most of these strength conditioning coaches at the collegiate level have CSCS certifications, and this is built into the certification. So by the end of getting certified, you should be able to coach proficiently at Olympic lifting, which means you should be able to explain these things to the athletes, break it down slowly, and make sure you're preventing injury. In addition, because I came from CrossFit, and that's where I saw majority of the Olympic lifting happening in every day, I found an article on the rate and risk factors of injury within CrossFit in relation to Olympic lifting. So there was 112 CrossFit participants chosen that were followed over 12 weeks to just see if anyone had gotten injured based on the training they were doing in the Olympic lifting. And they found that 2.10 athletes per 1,000 training hours were found to have injury. Now, this doesn't even mean that these injuries were major. They were just any sort of injury to keep them out of another day of training or some time of training. And quoted in the article by the authors, the injury incidence rate associated with CrossFit training was low and comparable to the other forms of recreational fitness activities. which means that there is nothing more, there's nothing about Olympic lifting specifically that prevents a higher injury rate when it's taught correctly. To further this, we're talking about professionals in a sports setting, not just a average day CrossFit coach and an average day participant of that type of workout. So we're talking about even higher levels of expertise on how to coach this and prevent injuries to make sure athletes aren't getting hurt. To summarize, Olympic weightlifting will help produce vertical power and muscle stability as seen especially in shoulders. Olympic lifting produces more vertical power results than the other training methods we talked about, strength training and vertical jump training, both not being able to produce as much vertical jump power as Olympic lifting. And the injury rate is relatively low and can be further prevented by precautions taken by any sort of staff member in that position. So, in essence, there's no reason that we shouldn't be providing this program for athletes in the volleyball world. And moving forward as a collegiate coach that I would like to be after school, or even being a strength coach, I think it's important that we understand why this is important for volleyball and utilize it with our athletes as much as we can. Thank you guys. Here are my references.